Hey Saberland, Starkiller here from TRA Forums and Starkiller Armory. I wanted to show off a build that I just completed last night. It was a commission for a friend of mine, and it is obviously a TFA Graflex, something that I've been wanting to do and haven't had the chance to do yet, so yay me, I got to do it. So this is a Roman's Graflex. On the outside it's pretty straightforward. I started as a Roman's replica and already came converted for episode 7, so it already had the grips, the clamp card, and the glass eye with the exposed brass, and the knurling was removed. It came with the kobold. So the only stuff that I had to do to the outside to make it accurate was basically fabricate and install a cover for the bottom to cover the Graflex logo and whatnot, as seen in the film. Didn't go with a clamp cover because the unit shipped with a logoless clamp. So that was awesome. So this thing is pretty special. We talked about what he wanted and we settled on RGB. He builds pretty cool lightsabers himself, but he has designed his own sound card and he's never used a Plecter Labs anything. So after years of me pontificating about how great the Plecter Labs products were, I convinced him to let me build him something that had a crystal focus in it. And I highly doubt that he's going to be disappointed because this thing is awesome. So, like I said, this is a Roman's, and I know there was a lot of heat going on about, you know, the Solos hold blade holder not working with the Roman's Graflex, but after watching Scott J.U.A.'s video, I decided to just go for it and do whatever modifications I had to make it work, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. The only thing that I see with the Solos hold blade holder, which this is, that is not necessarily fantastic, but as Scott J.U.A. pointed out, that is common even with vintage Graflexes. There's just a couple of millimeters of misalignment with one of the holes. Other than that, that's it. There's no big deal. So it worked. Had to Dremel a few things and kind of work on it a little bit, but it worked. So a lot of you know the Solos hold blade holder is designed to be used in conjunction with fully removable core chassis, and this has one. Spoiler alert, this is a really cool saber. So like I said, we decided on crystal focus. He really wanted RGB, so we went RGB. It's got a Tri-Cree red, green, royal blue, crystal focus version 8, 3000 milliamp hour 18650 battery, and a color extender on the inside. It also has a rice port. So how did I fit all of this into a chassis? I don't know, but I did. So let's get to business and check it out. So first of all, I recommend, if you're gonna open it up, I always recommend undoing the clamp here. Don't ever try to wrench it open without undoing the clamp. That's gonna scratch up the parts. You'll also notice that after you do that for a while, you're gonna kind of loosen up things and it's not going to hold together as tight as possible. So always remember step number 1, loosen the clamp. Step number 2, what I like to do, I like to just slide the card out. That way you're not going to drop it on the floor, you're not going to lose it when you go to pick it up. Step number 3, sorry, this is really hard to be doing this through a camera phone. So step number 3 is grab the upper half and the clamp and find that sweet spot and just really gently get it to come apart. Okay, so there are little like legs on the inside of the clamp that allow it to glide into these grooves. So just be really gentle when you pull that part out. Otherwise it will scratch your chassis up pretty good. So let's set that aside. So ta-da, look at that. We have a reveal core Graflex with a neat little crystal chamber here. So let's fire it up and take a look. Here's the unhinged sound font that I put on. It's episode 7 crossguard. So, this is Martin Beyer's Graflex, also known as Vader on Facebook and TRA forums. His Graflex chassis, which is fantastic. I talked to Richard and we wanted something kind of grubby and something that had been passed down through generations and was just kind of old looking. So I painted and weathered up the chassis pretty nice, and I think it turned out pretty well. So here's your 18650 battery. These little arms, or little doors open up. You can pop it out. Close them up. Here's your main door. So you can pop this open gently. There's all the wiring in there. I recommend not really playing around in that area too much, just because, stuff can be fragile, so let's not break it. So I'll get some crystal chamber detail here. I went with the little U-bars there. So this is RGB, and I did wire the RGB LED into the PWM signals as well. So you do get the color changing crystal chamber. Matches whatever the blade is doing at any time. So that's pretty cool. You can see it also has a shine through glass eye, which I think is just super classy. But that's not the entire reveal, so let's look at the rest of the deal here. So powered off. So to access the rest of the reveal core, step 1 is to undo the glass eye, set it aside. And then I like to, just as a precaution, probably not that necessary, I like to unscrew the red button just a little bit and swing it to the side. You're not going to throw anything out of alignment here because the plunger on the inside of the red button is actually black hot glue, which I found is extremely strong and works really well and is really easy to adjust, how high your plunger is to get really positive switch engagement on the top. So there we have the activation switch. And so to get this out, you want to put a hand here. Don't twist a lot. Just put a hand here and a hand there. It is a tight fit. I wanted it to be so things don't wiggle around. But just kind of gently unsheath the whole thing. And there we are. So that is your entire lightsaber right there, pretty much. You got your main activation up there, then your auxiliary, and then your color extender. Martin has a video that shows his chassis, and this is one of the other options. The one that he did has a plasma gate, so it's like a second crystal chamber right here. You have an alternative option. You've got this little cage for an additional PCB. So I fit the color extender in there, and I also threw a full-size rice port in there. I was playing around with wiring the teeny tiny little itty bitty rice port that he sent me with the kit, but it goes right there in that little dinky square hole right where my thumb is, and that really is a lot smaller than it looks, and I just didn't want to mess around with it that much. It was a pain. So I decided, hey, I've got enough room. I'm just going to throw a regular rice port in. So this rice port is laid out horizontally here. It's tucked in here neatly. It doesn't rattle around at all. So just pay attention to how this is in here. It's all, completely isolated electrically. It's not gonna short anything out. But the wires here on the back, just kind of tug on them, and it opens up. And there, you've got your rice port. So these wires are hot glued, so you don't have any, pinch points. You're not going to break the connections off. And it's also hot glued in that hole, so we don't, have any major pinch points here. So when you go to put it back, the way that I did it was red towards the head, and then just kind of tuck the little of course it wants to be slightly difficult while I'm making the video on the camera. But anyway, tuck the little tail in there. Try not to bend the wires at a 90-degree angle. I just kind of tuck them in there just to the point where it's not going to interfere with sliding the chassis in. And just be careful as you go to put things back in. It will pinch if you're not careful, if you're not paying attention. Also, I forgot to grab my tweezers, but right here in the crystal chamber, you see this little slot there, you can kind of see it. That's where the SD card access is. So you get some little tweezers down in there and you poke and you can yank it right out. It's a little bit of a pain and you got to be careful. And yeah, but it's accessible. I've switched it about 5 times a day dealing with sound fonts. So yeah, so let's stick it back in, fire it up, and I'll go over a couple of the sound fonts that I put in this thing specially for you, Richard. And yeah, pretty cool so far. I dig it. This chassis is really neat. I recommend it to anyone. The only caveat is, and it's definitely not a negative, it's just a caveat, if you're going to use Martin Beyer's chassis, you should know what you're doing, and you should set aside a lot of time, because it is a time-intensive thing, and it's something that you really need to do right and pay attention to. There are all kinds of little tiny dinky intricacies with this chassis system that beg your attention. So don't do it when you're distracted, and don't rush it. As Mad Cow says, if you rush it, you wreck it. I really like that motto. So kind of get things back together here. There's a little cancel sound because I plugged the thingy back in and hit the button on accident. So the glass eye can be just a tiny bit finicky. Well, it's of course not going to be finicky right now when I say it's finicky. But if you find that it doesn't want to screw in, I just kind of give this a little bit of a wiggle, and then it'll loosen up and it'll screw right in. All right, so let's get this back on properly. I realized when I went to make this video that all the sabers that I currently have that are operational have 1-inch blade sockets, and I have an OB Shane blade that is 7/8, but it is adapted to be put in a 1-inch blade socket. So I don't have any actual 7/8 blades to use for this video. So sorry, Richard, you're gonna have to wait to see it in action until you get it. But I promise it's very bright. So, okay, so quickly, let's get the card back in. Just going to cycle through the fonts. I'm just going to kind of show you how that works. The font selection, so you have your main activation switch is the red button, and then the slide tab is your auxiliary switch. So we pull it back until it beeps, hit it once again. Sound bank selection. So that's unhinged. That's a cross-guard Kylo Ren sound font made by Mad Cow. Hoth is one of my favorites. That's in episode 5, Luke sound font.
Revolt.
Revolt's cool.
Shatterpoint.
Shatterpoint is a Mace Windu. Force Unleashed 2 Camino.
Republic Crucible.
Republic Crystal. That is Heirloom, so this is going to be a episode 4 A New Hope Luke font. So to select, you just... Sorry, you're going to be a little cut in the video here. I just got a phone call and it ended my video. So I was saying to select the sound font when you're in the voice menu, you just kind of hold back on the tab until it says its name again, and then you're in. So like I said, this is Heirloom. It's a Luke, A New Hope font. So it's supposed to sound, let's get that color correct. It's supposed to sound a lot like Luke's saber. There we go. There's a nice cyan. Luke saber from New Hope. I didn't hold back on enough.
Sound bank selection. Youngling audio player.
Night for The Force Awakens Graflex.
So this is the one that I was really excited about putting on.
The Force Awakens Graflex.
That lightsaber was Luke's and his father's before him, and now it calls to you.
So even though we did a 3.7 volt single cell hack on the crystal focus. It's pretty loud. It's not that quiet. It's not as loud as it would be if it was 7.4 still, but it's not very quiet at all. So there you go. Oh, yeah, that's a better color. Force effect sound. It's hard to do with one hand. Anyway, so yeah, we have a Force Awakens Graflex font. Very cool. And the last thing I wanted to show you was the audio player.
Sound bank selection.
This isn't going to be very exciting for a lot of people here who, you know, deal with Plecter Labs boards all the time, but this is a new thing for Richard.
Youngling, audio player. Audio player.
So here's the audio player. And it installed a bunch of different sound files in here, so like I said, this thing will sit on the table and kind of tell stories.
The centuries preceding the Great War were a time
We'll also
of
play the
peace
Imperial
and growth
March
for the
and
Republic.
a couple other songs.
Dozens of new star systems joined the Galactic Senate.
You can turn the blade
For
on.
the Sith Empire, however, these centuries were marked by a rapid acceleration in the preparations for war.
To get out of it, just hold back.
Sound bank selection.
The Force Awakens Graflex. Nebula. Unhinged. Off. Revolt.
So yeah, Saber's done. It's coming your way here in a few. I really hope you like it. Yeah, Star Killer out.